Hello and welcome to Film Slam Stream's post-film conversation for J. La Cafard, or otherwise known as Bint Werdan. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm an instructor of film, media arts, and communications, as well as moderator for this conversation. We're very pleased to be joined by the director of this film, Maysaa Almumin. I hope I
Yes,
pronounced it correctly.
yes, said well.
Right,
That was
okay,
powerful.
thank you. She's joining us actually from Cairo, Egypt, but she's originally from Cafard, and is based in Qatar. So, Masa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Eric, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's get right into it. How in the world did you come up with this idea?
Well, there's okay, if I was to really get into it, it's semi-autobiographical. There was a moment in my life where I was working in such an office. I was working in a corporate office, and I felt very unfulfilled, regardless of all this kind of perceived success or stability and, job stability, relative success, pleasant people around me, that I just felt extremely unfulfilled, and I wasn't aware that what I was experiencing was depression, essentially. I felt unfulfilled. I felt a lot of self-loathing. I did not know how to connect with people, and outwardly it was quite subtle, and but inwardly these feelings felt absolutely huge. And so I remember this particular time when I was working in this office. One of the things that I would do is actually just remove myself from the situation and spend a long time in the restroom, and I just couldn't bring myself to come out, and just, so that was kind of my little hiding space. And there I saw actually a cockroach that was struggling to get up. It was laying on its back and it was wriggling, and then I felt like an affinity and a level of empathy with this cockroach, and I felt like, well, the struggle is kind of mutual, and I felt like that little roach. And I didn't have the heart, like, it's a terrible thing, but in my part of the world, you see a pest, the immediate thing to do is exterminate it. But I didn't have the heart to do that, and I just felt like, was I going to be quite disgusting if I saved the animal, because it's supposed to be a dirty animal and a pest? And so there were all these kind of emotions, and I thought, wow, the way that I regard this cockroach is kind of like the way that I regard my situation, is like, I don't know what it is, I don't know how to deal with it, so I'm just going to ignore it and just leave it be until nature takes its course. And then I became quite obsessed with this cockroach, and I would go to the bathroom every time and to see that, like, did anyone sweep it up, take it away, did it die? And there it was, poor thing, wriggling for about 10 days. And so when I eventually got, finally decided to seek help for the way that I was feeling. And I felt, I am privileged, I'm in a good job, I have nothing to complain about. So how on earth could I felt like that I was a spoiled brat, and yeah. So when the doctor said, actually, you're clinically depressed, I really, it was hard for me to believe. So this moment, this film is about kind of the moment of realization, is, like, what is it that I'm facing? What is it that I was allowing myself to feel, and too scared of feeling to let go of. So there's that. And then, it's funny because there are some people that affiliate it with Kafka, obviously, because, the visual of the cockroach. But I actually place a little Easter egg in the film that kind of acknowledges that, but, in a little bit of an antagonistic way. The on her bedside table in the opening credits, there's a book that she's reading, and it's The Streets of Crocodiles by Bruno Schulz. And Bruno Schulz himself, in his lifetime, was frequently compared with Kafka.
Interesting, very interesting. So this film, would you say it was more therapeutic for you to make, or were you trying to reach a population that struggle with depression? What was the intent of the film then?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I come from a culture. My experience with things like this is that, if I ever told my mother that I was feeling down or unsure of myself, her response is always, say a prayer and have a glass of water, and don't be ridiculous. There's nothing wrong with you, and you're not allowed to talk about, or express any feelings of uncertainty, depression, or illness, because I guess I didn't know. I mean, like, especially for my parents' generation, where life was actually a bigger struggle than it is for my generation, where we experience modernity and, we've got a lot of creature comforts around us. There's no reason why you should be feeling low and depressed. I mean, in my particular case, it was postpartum depression. I had children, and, the struggle was, the thoughts were dark and the feelings were extremely low. And this was not something I could share with my mother because it was very easily dismissed, and it's dismissed just generally. And when I was told by the doctor, what it is that I was feeling and how I can actually, that there is a solution, that there is a process, and it's like any an illness that can be treated. It was like an aha moment for me, and then I realized it was like, I was mind blown, because I started to think back to all the people that I've seen around me that were probably depressed, but because we never spoke about it, it wasn't treated, it wasn't spoken about, it wasn't shared. And because of that, there was a lot of people around me that I saw were suffering, and just nobody really addressed it. So for me, it was important to kind of bring that, especially to the Arab community. I mean, as you can tell from my accent, I'm someone who grew up in the UK, in a very cosmopolitan environment. I lived in London, so, it's multinational, multicultural, but I was adamant to make it in Arabic, in an Arab city, with an Arab cast, because I really needed to communicate this particular topic to our community. And I'm sure that the topic, transcends all nationalities, all cultures, so that it can be relatable on many different levels.
Okay, interesting. That's quite interesting, a unique way to address reach people, especially through the arts in that way. Let's talk more about the production itself. Can you tell us a little bit of insight? Did you actually animate the roaches? Did you actually find them? Tell us about how you actually found the roaches and incorporated them into the film.
Yeah. So I'm a professor of art and design. I'm trained as an architect. So for me, making film, in a lot of my films, I concentrate a lot on the art department and the production design, because I do believe that it's a wonderful vehicle for the narrative. So I was very adamant that I did not want to create this cockroach using CGI or animation. So that particular puppet was made. I made it physically as a giant puppet. The cockroach is a giant puppet, and
Well, what did you make it out of?
Foam, resin, acrylic paint, polyurethane, rubber. I used wires for the joints. I rigged it up with wires, and I had a few people in the crew kind of pull on the strings and things like that. So and I was adamant to make it real, that the presence would be real and slightly theatrical, because there is a slight absurdity in the way that she is, manifesting, a giant cockroach in her bed. So, so I wanted to acknowledge that the absurdity of the feeling, but not to be dismissive of the feeling itself, but just that, that idea that, that the self-loathing is kind of self-perpetuated and you just don't know how to get out of it. Is it a part of my imagination? Am I, what kind of recognition do I have in this feeling that I've manifested physically in my life?
Okay. And what about the smaller roaches? Were those actual roaches?
The roaches were real. And
Okay.
those were actual roaches. So yeah.
And
So I have a lot of
how do you get roaches? I mean, you can't just go to a store and buy them, or can you?
No. You see, we had a cockroach handler here. It's funny because it was like I was speaking to someone. I was just like, I just need to get lots of roaches for someone I don't know how. And he told me, I know the guy. In fact, there was a film that was just shot with a cockroach, and there's this guy that goes literally into the sewers, collects a bunch of them, puts in the bag. And I actually sat down, had a meeting with him, and I said, listen, the roaches don't get hurt. And you've got to pick up every single one of them and take them away from the set when you're done. Every single one. Because I have, my actress has a phobia of roaches. So she was an actual champ, an absolute champ for allowing me to put roaches on her. But I told her that I will give her all the time that she needs. And we kind of spoke through the film, and she could really relate to the character. And so she was saying, I really want to do this. I really want to do this.
But back up a little bit. I mean, in your casting for this, that would be one of the first things you would look for in finding an actor, someone that is comfortable doing the role, but yet still you cast her.
Yes,
Tell us
I
about
know. I know. I was not forthright in the casting call because I knew that it would deter a lot of people. I was just like, I'm not going to have anyone to audition for this. But I saw the reel of this woman, and she was absolutely amazing and really fit the character. And so when she came in, I told her, listen, I don't need to audition you because you already are the woman in the script. But I have a question for you. How are you with acting with animals? And she said, oh, I like animals.
Animals?
And I was like, okay, well, how small, and like, are you all right with tiny animals? And she was like, well, how small? I mean, what are you talking about, rats? And I was just like, insects. And then I told her it was roaches, and her face just dropped. But the thing is, before I asked her this question, she and I had this wonderful conversation where we're talking about the feelings of depression, and about the role of a woman in a work environment, about the struggles of just human beings in a fast-paced life, and how one deals with mental wellness in a fast-paced environment. So we really connected, and so she was like, oh my God, this is great. And then I told her the script, and I told her that, and she was just like, you know what, I'm prepared to do this for the script. And because I connect well with you. So that's how that happened.
Yeah, that's a true professional. That's wonderful. And she did a fantastic job with the film. So tell us a little bit more about the production process. How many days did you spend filming? How many days did you spend editing and so forth?
Right. So I shot this film here in Cairo. I come here to Cairo quite a bit, even though I'm based in Qatar, because the crew that I've been working with, I've built up a wonderful rapport with my cinematographer, line producer, and location managers. So they were based here, and I thought, okay, I'm going to take the film here to Cairo. And so that's what we did. The film took 4 days to shoot, and 2 in the apartment and 2 in the office scenes. And they built here in they're amazing at production design and set building here. They built that set for the office for me within like a day and a half, and the crew was absolutely amazing. So the film industry here is very quick and nimble on its feet, and it's a very harsh industry. So they're extremely skilled that way. I edited here in Cairo as well. And that took about 3 weeks. The sound took a lot. I actually did it in Paris simply because I started out in film very, very late in life. So the connections that I made were the connections that I felt important to me. So since the person that I knew for sound design was in Paris, that's who I wanted to work with, and they understood quite well what I wanted, and that took another 3 weeks. But it was, for me, the tinkering with the film. It's just like you make the film and it's big, and it's you just start tweaking, and that can take ages. And I got quite obsessive with it, and that's why it took a long time. But also, I knew, in terms of, like, I wanted to tweak it up to my festival strategy. My first festival screening, so I took the license just to keep tweaking it until it got accepted into a festival, which was Malmo Arab Film Festival in Sweden. And so yeah, it dragged on a long time, but honestly, the time that it was spent on it wasn't as long as a year and a half.
And do you feel you achieved your goal in the film, in making this film?
Absolutely. It was the first big film of that size for me. I'd made a couple of very short films with a few very simple, tiny crew, like 3-4 people, and that was it. But this was proper crew with extras and a proper art department, and yeah, I mean, I think at one point, when in the office sets, there were like about 35 people on set. So I mean, that was huge for me. So it was the film that I learned about the industry, because then going to distribution, and it actually got sold to Netflix Middle East. So taking it from conception all the way to sales this is the film that I feel like truly made me not only a filmmaker, but someone that understands the film industry.
And a couple minutes we have left, what has the reception been like for this film? What do people say to you about it?
It's interesting because there's the fact that it has surrealist elements and fantasy elements. It invites an audience to interpret the film. So if you take it as face value, the story is what it is. A woman meets a cockroach, and it gets to a point where it overwhelms her. But then the roach can be a symbol for anything that overwhelms you. So in the intended instance, it was depression, but you can put it as, like, the bad job, the situation that you want to get out of, the what is it that's toxic in your life, and you need to just whack it and get it out of your life, and actually take the decision to do that.
Okay, and as we wrap up here, what's next for you? Is there a plan for a sequel or another film?
Yeah, well, I'm continuing to work on short films. In fact, I'm in production at the moment for a part animation, part live action film set in that I'm going to be shooting in Qatar, called Constant. And I actually have another film that's called And I Was Left Behind, which is a 6-minute visceral documentary, I call it, about me revisiting a memory that I have of my grandmother, and the idea of family separation and distance between the people that you love. And it's currently doing its festival rounds at the moment. And yeah, so in production for that. And I have a feature film cooking at the moment about a middle-aged Arab woman that's looking for love in all the wrong places.
Oh, I'll be interested to see how you display that. Well, Maysaa, thank you so much for joining us and enlightening us with this film and bringing this film to our attention. I wish you all the best with it, and we do hope to see you again soon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you for the invitation. It's been so lovely, and thanks to the organizing team and Gabby behind the scenes, and for this opportunity. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise, thank you. And thank you to our audience for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about any of our upcoming film festival, please visit us at clevelandfilm.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.